Hello and welcome back to ITC Strategic Tax Podcast. I'm Stephen Shaw, and with me is our founder and CEO of ITC Tax, Mark Dzeda. Hey, Mark.
Pleased to be here.
Good to
Be back.
see you again.
Thank you.
Yeah. Even though I see you every day, but on the podcast, good to see you today.
Yeah, it's a different image.
Well, today we thought we'd talk about kind of a hot topic this time of year is corrections. So, the reason why corrections are important is because you have another bite at the apple for tax year 2025. Just because we rolled over into a new tax season of tax year 2026, that doesn't preclude you from being able to, appeal your 2025 value through a correction process. There are some requirements, right, Mark, to accomplish that goal. But that's how we can help ITC Tax in looking at the information that we need to justify and quantify whether the account might qualify for correction. Mark, you want to give some insight on what those qualifying factors might be?
Sure. Okay. The correction we're talking about here is called a substantial error correction. It's a 2525D. You basically have to prove that you're 1/3 over assessed or over appraised. Generally that is done at the you file an appeal, a protest. It's done at some board of reviewing officer or a actual appraisal review board. Sometimes will either require you to go before the board. Other times, if the evidence is insurmountable, they may agree with you and just make the adjustment before you ever do go to the board. But filing that correction, it's a great opportunity to remedy something that other states don't allow, that Texas does. So there are some requirements you must meet. The first one is you have to prove you're overassessed by 1/3 or reduce the value by 25%. The second one is that you're not delinquent on your taxes. Stephen, when they talk about delinquent on your taxes, what is the amount that you owe? When they talk about, I've heard about this amount not in dispute. Can you define that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's you're paying taxes on a value that you believe the value should be on your account, whether it's a real property account or business personal property account. So, for example, if the value on your account's 10 million per the local appraisal district, but you believe the value should be 5 million. So one, you've met the qualification that Mark just identified. And then two, what Mark was talking about, value in dispute, you would pay your taxes per the current tax rate on that $5 million value instead of the full amount of the 10. So that's what Mark is referring to in value dispute. Now keep in mind, uh, regardless of how the correction works out, if you pay on 5 million, but through the correction process, um, you settle at 7.5 million, you still meet the qualifications, but now you owe the difference, right, Mark? And that 5 million times the tax rate plus and the 7.5 million. And if you pay within a certain time frame, you can avoid penalty and interest, correct, Mark?
Yes. Now, are there any penalties or any fees associated with filing this correction? Should it withstand the appeal process?
Yeah. So, one thing to keep in mind, just so you're not alarmed, is that there is a 10% penalty. So basically, it's the difference of the savings, right, Mark? So they apply the 10% to the difference of what the taxes would have been versus what the taxes savings is currently through the correction process. But in most cases, it's well worth the 10%, and it's well worth doing the review of if you qualify, because a lot of times you're could be saving a significant amount um, versus what you're currently, could be paying tax wise.
Would you call this almost a risk-free exercise for the owner who's considering filing a correction motion?
Yeah, there's no risk involved because you're looking at do you qualify, and if you qualify, You just fill out the forms. They're very basic forms, provide the information that supports your position. And then you basically go through the normal hearing process.
Mm.
It's just for a correction with the understanding that this is typically going to be after taxes are due. So make sure you pay your taxes timely, because if you don't, then you no longer qualify. That's the risk. If you don't pay your taxes, then you no longer qualify for the correction.
I guess, what are some of the arguments or issues that an owner or taxpayer should consider that might justify this correction being approved, or, being, I guess, once it's submitted, having the appraisal district agree with it? What are some of the issues that the owners should look at or consider that maybe weren't addressed when the value was, when it came out initially?
Um, Items like inventory, if inventory was overstated and the overstatement is significant enough to allows you to qualify. If there's any issues that weren't addressed for the prior year. So since we're talking about tax year 2025, that have been issues that might have come up throughout the 2024 year that could have heavily impacted your process as a manufacturer or just your facility in general, to where either it impacts your equipment or just you as a business. So there's additional obsolescence that could have been discussed that weren't. Or it was just an oversight of an account that you might not have known anything about, and now you do, and you don't know what the ramifications are to get it, some type of an agreement with the county, to reduce your value, and this correction process is one way to allow for that.
What kind of facilities have you had good success with before when you've done this? Like, what kind of industries, maybe types of plants or locations have you had success? And maybe were there any, other than like inventory, were there any reasons or anything that just comes to mind immediately where you've had, great success? And maybe what are some of the amounts maybe you could say as far as tax savings that stand out?
Yeah, just in general, it's really not one specific industry per se. It obviously any industry can qualify, but in regards to like a manufacturing facility, not naming any names, but inventory by another consulting firm was misrepresented, and then after further discussions with the property owner, we realized that there's some additional utilization that could have been applied to the current assets. And at times there was damages that occurred throughout the year, or just idled equipment because of the market for them took a bad turn, so they weren't using half of the facility, therefore half of the equipment. And so making those type of adjustments through the correction process, because they did not file an appeal timely through the regular appeal process, there were significant savings up to 25, 50% of value that ultimately resulted, close to $100,000 in just taxes alone. So,
Are these hearings, like, once, say you have to file I'm going to call it the correction motion by January 31st. I assume it's postmarked, but always best to get it hand delivered with proof that it was received by January 31st, as well as the taxes are paid. How quick is the turnaround once you file it? Are you talking about they're going to schedule you in the next week, the next 3 months, or does it depend on the appraisal district that you're in? Maybe the more rural, maybe it's not until they meet, maybe in March or April. But is the turnaround pretty quick?
I would say the smaller counties turnaround is usually pretty quick. One, they're trying to avoid any type of refund that they might have to pay out. They rather settle it now, get the taxable value in a position where they can get a timely bill out and those taxes be paid for the current year. Versus your larger counties, they're not overly concerned about refunds as much as a rural county might be.
Mhm.
Um, and just the size of them usually takes a little longer. Um, Because a lot of times with these larger counties, i.e., Harris County, Dallas, Travis, in some cases, they're still appealing 2025 values through the normal administrative appeal process. And they just don't have the bandwidth to justify or to have corrections as part of the appeal process, because they're still, dealing with current appeals. So a lot of times it might take a little longer than one would hope, but yeah, I would say, give it 2 or 3 months. And if you don't hear anything back, then reach out. But um, you know, at the most 2 or 3 months, I would say.
And are these conducted like regular hearings where you go in, you have evidence, they have their evidence, and it generally what, 10, 15, 20-minute hearing, and then it's all over and you'll get a decision that day? Is it just like a regular protest hearing?
Yeah, with some counties you'll get a decision that day, other counties might not, or in some cases you'll get, not most, but in some cases you'll get a decision with a piece of paper showing you what that value is. With other counties, you'll receive it in the mail through a board order. But yeah, the appeal process is very similar in the way you present your evidence, the way the county presents their evidence. It's just one's a administrative appeal. This one would be a correction appeal.
And do you have the same remedies as a regular protest hearing where if you're not satisfied with the result, you have to file litigation within 60 days? And does that create any animosity or ill will with your appraisal district, or are there just so many of these type of corrections and protests filed that for most every appraisal district they could care less? It doesn't stir the pot whatsoever.
No, it doesn't stir the pot. Um, yeah, I mean the turnaround time is usually pretty quick. But there's no backlash for filing a correction.
Okay.
Everybody has a right. And then to your point too, if you're not satisfied with the outcome, you can still appeal through litigation.
It's January and they've got until the 31st to file these appeals or
Yeah.
protests, correct?
Yes.
Received, early delivered, but received by the 31st.
Hmm.
But it sounds like it's a great way to save some additional capital.
Yeah, it's a great way, and in most cases, fairly easy.
Mhm.
Especially if you have a really good case of what the value should be based on the factors that we kind of talked about. And there might be other factors to consider too. But you don't know those until, you see the evidence and can talk to the property owner. Um, but yeah, really the only caveat of a penalty is the 10% penalty. But if you're saving money on your overall property taxes, a 10% penalty is something you can live with.
Oh, yeah. It sounds to me like it's 90% found money, no matter what happens,
Right.
with that 10% penalty.
Right. Yeah. And to your point earlier, yeah, a date stamp, certified date stamp is an important way. But if you live close to the appraisal district, then by all means, walk it in by hand and, have them date stamp it to show that it was filed timely. So that's all we have today on corrections. Thanks again, Mark, for your time. And, we appreciate y'all's time. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.
Thank you. You're welcome.